I have a question there, and a question here, and then we'll continue after that. Yes. Yes.
A little different subject, to do with seniors. The Medicare Part D fiasco, which millions of seniors cannot afford medication. Would you support that prescription drug companies be required to negotiate with Medicare for prescription drugs and save us hundreds of millions of dollars?
Okay, and we're going to start with Mr. Mejias.
Yeah, you know, right now 47 million Americans live in fear of the most common illnesses because they don't have health insurance. And our seniors are paying more and more money for their prescription drugs than ever before. And this is the problem with the politicians in Washington. They've sold us out to the people that are giving them the campaign contribution. These pharmaceutical companies now, you know, to guarantee their windfall profit, Peter King voted to not allow our government to negotiate cheaper prices. He also voted to not allow our government to re-import cheaper drugs for seniors. Right now, a senior will pay close to 100% of their prescription drug costs after $2,250 in prescription drugs, and 25% of that up to $2,250. So the Republicans in Congress, with Peter King, created this tremendous donut hole gap in coverage, where seniors who can't afford it at all, who can afford it the least, here in Nassau County, have to choose between paying their taxes or paying their rent, putting food on the table, and their medicine. And why? Because we've been sold out to these big pharmaceutical companies. They're making huge windfall profits, stuffing their pockets with your hard-earned money, and these guys are taking their campaign contribution. The pharmaceutical companies' investment in Peter King and the rest of the Republican leadership has paid off, so they're making more money than ever. Seniors are paying more money than ever, and that's what's wrong with our government right now. And that's what I mean when I say we got to take back America from the culture of corruption in Washington. There's too much influence of lobbyists in Washington, too much influence from big corporations and special interests, and not enough attention paid to solving the real problems of the people here on Long Island. You know, there are so many different problems that we have here, and this cuts across the board in a lot of issues you'll hear tonight. But right now, on this particular issue, seniors have been left behind. And I will tell you that if I get to Congress in January, I will make sure that our government negotiates cheaper drug prices. I will make sure that we can re-import drugs from other countries that are cheaper for our seniors, and that our seniors won't have to make those tough choices of putting food on their table or paying for their medicine. My mother turned 65 this year, and it appalls me to think that this Medicare Part D program, which is probably one of the most confusing programs the government's ever put together, she's got to pay an extra $3,000 for prescription drugs after working so hard and paying all those taxes.
Thank you. We can hold the clapping down. We can go faster and get more questions in. Mr. King.
I'm talking about a paucity of factual information. Let's start from the beginning. For 40 years, there was absolutely no prescription drug coverage for senior citizens. The bill that I voted for in 2003, which was also supported by AARP, by the NAACP, and other radical organizations like that, saves the average senior citizen $1,100. It's a perfect no, but it's $1,100 less than they were paying before, and it covers 95% of their catastrophic costs. Now, obviously, we can always improve things, but let's give some credit for the fact that there was zero before. Now there's $1,100, which is being saved. And there are 9 million low-income seniors who are paying nothing at all for their prescription drugs as a result of this. And also, if I go back to some of the points that made before about the 9/11 Commission, the chairman of the 9/11 Commission, Tom Kane, has supported me. We talk about the marks that have been given to by the Homeland Security Commission in Washington, getting B's and F's. Nassau County got an F in every category from the state senate when they were evaluating the Homeland Security performance here in Nassau County. New York City has 1,000 police officers involved in counterterrorism. Suffolk County is a massive counterterrorism force. Nassau County doesn't have one full-time intelligence police officer assigned to combat terrorism. That's the record of Nassau County, of my opponent who happens to be on the Public Safety Commission. As far as job and stopping pay raises, you listen to his fellow Democrats, they say they're out front, he jumped in later and grabbed the credit. That's not me saying, that's his own people, David Denenberg and others on the committee. And as far as the pay raise, when it came to a vote on October 11th to rescind that money from the budget, you didn't even vote at the Rules Committee. You weren't even there to vote. So, I mean, this is, again, a glorification process. The issues are too important here for sound bites. Let's discuss them. Should more be done for senior citizens? Absolutely. Should more be done for prescription drugs? Yes. But we've made a significant stride forward. Let's debate that. Try to stop some of the name calling and address specifically what you would do, how you would do it, how it should be done. And I think that's, people talk about the culture of corruption in Washington. What people are more upset about is the blind partisanship. I continue to work across party lines, and I try to avoid this type of rhetoric that we're hearing tonight from the other side.
the questions. We know that there are people for both candidates. That is very nice to know. No more clapping. Man in the white sweater.
Yes, recently, Secretary of State, former Secretary of State Baker suggested that one change of policy that might be useful is to talk to problem countries like North Korea, Iran, and Syria. He did that himself to some degree. Would you favor that kind of a change of policy from what we have had up until now?
Okay, and we're going to start with Mr. King.
We are talking to North Korea. We're talking to the six-party talks. Again, this is multilateral negotiations. And if we're talking to North Korea one-on-one, then we're isolating China, or isolating Japan, or isolating Japan, or isolating Russia. The significance of six-party talks is, and I'm not critical of President Clinton, he tried the unilateral talks. He had the agreed framework in 1994, and we did try to work with North Koreans, and during the whole time where they claimed to be not producing plutonium, they were producing uranium, and we saw where we were. I think that North Korea being such a vital issue, it's essential that we keep trying to engage, that we have to do more as far as leaning on China, and I think getting closer to Japan in doing that. What could be the tipping point here, and helping us, is the last thing China wants. They do, I think, provide 70% of the fuel, 40% of the food, for North Korea. So they have the most leverage over North Korea. But the last thing they want is a nuclear zone in the Pacific. And if North Korea continues to go ahead, Japan is definitely going to go nuclear, Taiwan will go nuclear, South Korea may consider going nuclear, which is the last thing China wants. That's why we have to keep all of them at the table, not allow ourselves to be locked in one-on-one with North Korea and isolating our allies. The same with Iran. We intentionally worked with the British, the German, and the French. I met with their ambassadors a number of times as they're conducting these talks with, well, somebody's taking me out of there, with Iran. And the idea was to have the European countries who have even closer, we have no trade relations with Iran because of the bill that was signed in 1996, the Iranian sanctions bill. By having 3 European countries deal, we are letting them get out front. It becomes multilateral, and that's why we're now at the Security Council. Talking one-on-one, for the sake of talking on one-on-one, it didn't work with President Clinton in Korea. We had to learn from that lesson, just as we learned the lesson of dealing with Arafat in the Middle East, and we had to. I would hate my words of eloquence missed by anyone in the room, especially the people in the cheap seats back there. So can you hear me back there now? Okay. This is getting the time signal. In any event, my point is, when one-on-one talks become important, yes. I mean, if the Chinese came to us tomorrow, or the Japanese came to us tomorrow, and said that Kim Jong-il thinks that something really could be achieved by one-on-one, we'll do it. We're not going to take the word of Kim Jong-il. We'll take it from our allies in that area.
Well, you can finish your thought, I mean, it's interrupted. Do you have anything else, Congressman?
That's it. Thanks, Dave. Thank you.
You know, okay, Iran and North Korea cannot be allowed to continue their nuclear development. I think we both agree on that. We both agree that there should be multilateral talks. I don't agree that we should necessarily completely outsource our negotiations to Russia and China, but we should be heavily involved in those talks. If we have to do unilateral talks as well, that's exactly what we need to do. We cannot take the military option off the table either. You know, we need to rattle our saber if we have to make sure that these hostile countries conform. You know, the problem is that our military right now is bogged down in a war in Iraq with no end in sight and no plan for an end, which is why I said before that we need to redeploy these troops to hotspots around the country, or have them ready to be redeployed to hotspots around the world, rather. And so, for the most part, we do agree on this particular issue. But since I have some time, I will go back to the F that you said we got from Senator Baldoni in Albany. You know, people's taxes here are high enough, and maybe if you delivered on that $83 million in Homeland Security funding that got cut, we can have some of that money in Nassau County and be able to pay for it. As far as the pay raise goes, you know, a lot of people like to take credit for things after the fact. You see that all the time, especially in Congress. But I'm the only legislator that's ever been stripped of his committee chairmanship for going against his own party. And what I'm saying is that I have no problem going against my own party if I think they're wrong. And I will, and I'll do it in Washington, and I'll ask tough questions of my own party, as well as the president and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, because I think our young men and women fighting and dying in Iraq deserve better. Our seniors that can't afford their prescription drugs and have the threat of privatizing their Social Security deserve better. And people here on Long Island deserve that type of representative in Congress.
Thank you. Man over here.
Hi. Could I ask one question of Congressman King and one question of...
No.
No.